Okay, so I'll be measuring Mark's blood pressure, and to do that we're using this particular instrument called a blood pressure monitor machine. It's automated, so really it just has an on-off button, and then you'll have a display panel showing the actual readings. So you'll have a reading which is your systolic over diastolic, that's your blood pressure reading, and you'll also have a heart rate value showing, which is your pulse value at the bottom, okay, which is beats per minute. So with the blood pressure reading, it's millimeters of mercury, the unit, okay. So Mark is going to be our test subject, and before we start measuring blood pressure, we must make sure with our test subject, especially if we're trying to get a normal reading, that the person is obviously relaxed, not excited. So we're trying not to excite Mark in any way or form. Hopefully he hasn't drunk too much coffee before this, because if he does, that would obviously have an effect on the blood pressure reading. Okay, Mark, so I need to have access to your upper arm area, if that's okay. So if you don't mind, if you don't have a problem, again with our students, a lot of them, they actually want not to have their upper arm handled. That's okay, so if for that particular reason, for modesty reasons, or because they just have a personal preference, you can actually record over their clothing. But preferably just one layer of clothing, okay? So if they're wearing, for example, like with me, a fleece or something else on top, then, you know, it's preferable for them to remove their upper layers so that they just have a one layer of clothing, okay? But with Mark, he's happy to allow me to touch his upper arm area. Because of COVID-19, I've obviously washed my hands beforehand, and this piece of equipment has been quarantined beforehand, so I don't need to wipe it down, okay? But for the students, they obviously have to wipe it down with a sanitizing wipe, like so, okay? So wipe down your equipment, anything that's going to come into contact with your test subject. Okay, so Mark, if you're ready, if you don't mind sitting down, and we're going to position you kind of parallel to the workstation. Okay, we want Mark's feet to touch the ground, okay? So we want him to be relaxed as possible, okay? When it comes to measuring his blood pressure, you have to attach the cuff in the correct way. So to do that, you must make sure the tubing is pointed downwards, okay? So I'm going to pass the cuff through his arm, so you can see the tubing. You have to make sure it's at least 2 centimeters minimum distance from the brachial artery, which is here, okay? So in his inner elbow area, you have the brachial artery. You can actually feel it. And so basically the tubing is at least, the cuff is at least 2 centimeters above this line. And you can see it's actually level with his heart. Yeah, so I'm going to now wrap this round his upper arm area. So it doesn't matter if it's the left or the right arm, but because the workbench is obviously positioned to be closest to this particular arm, we're using this arm, which is Mark's right arm, isn't it, Mark? Yes. Okay. Right, so now what we want him to do is we want to make sure that he has a kink in his elbow, okay? So you have this L shape, okay? We want his palms facing upwards, okay? And his feet touching the ground, and he's nice and calm, okay? We don't want him to be excitable. What else do we want him to do?
Stop talking.
Stop talking. So he shouldn't be talking, and hopefully he hasn't been running around beforehand, okay? Because we want this to be reflective of a normal reading for him. And now all you have to do is make sure that the tubing is in line with his artery. So this is what it cuts across. Okay. You will actually notice, just to give you an idea, there is actually normally there is kind of like an arrow. In this case, it's actually a circle, which kind of shows you where to attach the cuff in line with the brachial artery. So you could use that as your marker. But we're using the tubing, it doesn't really matter. So with different protocols, they say different things, but we're doing this to be at least, like I said, 2 centimeters, but this is in line with the brachial artery anyway, the tubing. Okay, so that tells you that it's in the right place. Okay, we're ready to go now, yeah? Are you ready, Mark?
Yeah.
Okay, so no talking from him, and we're not going to distract him in any way or form. So we just have to reassure Mark that it's going to get quite tight, and then over time it's going to just quickly deflate. So it's going to loosen up again. Okay, so that's 154 over 86 millimeters of mercury, and the pulse is 64. Okay? Stop it there.